What's up, everybody?
My name is Anthony Irvin.
You beat yourself?
Yeah, CB myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Jim Green.
Don't even need a hit of traffic light.
Okay, good.
Welcome to
One set.
Hey guys, what's up? This is our concluding episode of this 4-part Game of Thrones series that we've been doing, man. This has been a fun thing with the what ifs. We just came off of season 3 and 4 what ifs, and we had like a ball rolling with that. And now we are finally at the final episode of going over seasons 2 and 1. There's a lot to handle with this, so we're not going to do a lot of, talking before. We're just getting right into it. There's a lot to tackle. I just went off of a recap video, and I just went right through it with what ifs, and some of them are bigger, some of them may have a little bit more impact, some of them may have less. But dude, are you ready?
I'm excited. I am ready to wrap this up because this is something that we've been in the works on for a couple months now. Just finding the time to record the extra episodes to stock them away for when we're ready to release them. So once this is out there to everybody, once you are all tuning in and watching this, we've been working on and talking about this one for a little bit. So Anthony, I know I took the reins on the last one, so I'm going to let you kind of take the reins on this one, and I'm excited. I can't wait. Let's get right down to it.
Yeah, man. I think this is the first one that we actually had like research going into it, like actually making sure we have some type of facts right with a lot of these things. So let's just go right into it. So just like the last ones, we're starting right from the top or the end of the most recent season we just left off on. So that would be the top or the finale of season 2. And then we'll go all the way back down to the pilot of Game of Thrones. So my first what if is obviously starting from near the end of season 2, which would be, what if Stannis took King's Landing?
Yeah, I mean, it would have changed the course for a lot, right? I mean, because if you look at how the rest of the show panned out with Stannis, he thought he had terrific counsel. I mean, I think he was just seduced by Melisandre and her like visions, and Sir Davos was more like the voice of reason, and Stannis didn't want to listen to him. So it kind of for me is like if Stannis's army took King's Landing, maybe the remaining Lannisters wind up at Castle Rock, and then they're kicked out of King's Landing, and then I again, it's one of those things where you don't foresee Stannis lasting like all the way to the end of the show, right?
I was thinking that too.
I mean, with that twist, you could have I mean, the Red Wedding doesn't happen, right?
True.
You have and I don't think Stannis Baratheon would have created some sort of like a truce with the Starks, right? So and I think that they showed Catelyn Stark was trying to build an alliance with Stannis Baratheon, and it kind of like fell apart in season 2. And
so, I think she went to Renly as well.
Yeah. So she spoke to Renly, and her and Renly went to Stannis, and Stannis was just like, I don't need you.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So I think Stannis, if you would have landed in King's Landing on the Iron Throne, he wouldn't have been there for more than a couple seasons. You could have had Robb Stark take over, and then the Starks have the Iron Throne, and then somehow the Lannisters get it back, right?
Yeah.
Like you could have done it very twisted like that, but I felt like that would have just made a lot of change happening on the Iron Throne, rather than you have Robert Baratheon, die from the boar accident, which is in season 1, right? And we'll talk about that, I guess. But
then Joffrey for like 2 seasons,
Yeah, you have the Lannisters on the Iron Throne all the way until
well, yeah, no, because Cersei technically took it after that, or no, Tom and then Cersei. So they were Lannister. It was Lannister held the Iron Throne the whole series, pretty much.
Series until Daenerys like took King's Landing, which was like the second to last episode of the whole show, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like if Stannis took King's Landing, then Robb Stark could have taken King's Landing. But then I feel like the Lannisters would have reclaimed King's Landing, and then everything would have just kind of panned out similarly, right?
Yeah.
But again, that is under the pretense that like you never have trial by combat with Tyrion going to Essos with Daenerys, and where, but we actually talked about that in the last episode, like at length with Tyrion. If Oberyn actually beat the mountain, Tywin Lannister would have still been alive, and Tywin was like the mastermind behind the Lannisters moving the entire time. So
yes,
when Tyrion takes out Tywin at the end of season 4, Cersei actually blames Tyrion for messing everything up because Tywin was the brains behind the whole Lannister family legacy, right? So I feel like if Stannis took King's Landing somehow and the Lannisters retreated like outside of King's Landing, I feel like they would have let the Starks go in. Like they would have like kept close watch on the Starks trying to make a move in on King's Landing. And then the Lannisters would have moved in around the Starks. And then you have the same thing where like you could have had Tywin maybe kill Robb Stark, and then you still have either Joffrey or Tommen go into power. Somewhere along the way, Tywin dies differently, and then Cersei still winds up, the Queen of the Realm. I still think everything kind of pans out how we spoke on in the other 3 episodes, obviously with a lot more twists if Daenerys and Jon Snow never meet up. Lots to do there. I don't think again, if the Red Wedding never happened, we didn't see Robb Stark staying on the show for much longer than like another season, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So I think if Stannis wound up winning the Battle of Blackwater Bay, he might have been on the throne for a season, and then I don't. And perhaps this is because if these things panned out and it did last longer, the whole complexion of the show is just completely revamped. We're saying like what ifs, and like if they stuck around for like a little bit longer, how do you see the rest of the show kind of moving in a similar direction? And that's just it. I don't think that Stannis had the brain power or the resources to hold King's Landing and the throne for longer than like a season or a season and a half. So that kind of worked out. And then you just saw Stannis keep messing up, right?
You just kept messing up. Call back. Yeah. But this actually goes right off into, because this is like on 4th on my list, but it pretty much goes into what we're talking about right now. What if Tyrion never really found out about the excess wildfire under King's Landing that Cersei was using? So that would have been, because that was a big thing in the Blackwater Bay that started it off. They ran into the wildfire. What if that never happened? They would have had those extra ships. They wouldn't have had the, so I think it would have definitely impacted that battle if the wildfire wasn't starting off that thing in the beginning of it.
Yeah, Tyrion knowing about the wildfire is what actually helped them to win that battle. So if Tyrion didn't know about it, then Stannis' army very well could have taken over, and then everything that we just talked about could have...
Even without Tywin's help, I think they would have definitely overthrown that, because Tywin was the one that actually really sealed the deal at the end. But you can kind of say, what if Tywin got there too late? If everything else was happening, that obviously Stannis would have got in. But yeah, I think that wildfire was definitely a big pivotal thing too, along with, everything else that went down. If they didn't have that wildfire, Stannis' army would have just, maybe not like fully ran down everything, but they eventually probably would have won.
All they had to do was kill Joffrey, which was easy because he wasn't even out there trying to fight the battle at all. He was just standing there like a little, right?
Yeah. When you're talking about hydration is not only for people training for championships and marathons. We're talking about daily maintenance people. Jim, did you know that 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated?
I believe it, Anth. I mean, honestly, in my line of work, dealing with teaching children and also dancing with adults my age, younger and older, I can almost tell based off of how well people not just perform athletically, but how we carry ourselves and how we communicate back and forth, our facial gestures and just our energy alone. I can tell when somebody's sluggish and they're sleep deprived versus they're just sluggish because they're a dried up sponge because they are dehydrated, right?
Absolutely. And for people like me who are working the 9 to 5, and, for me gigging at night, proper hydration is definitely crucial to maintain function throughout the day and keeping yourself energized. And that's why proper functional hydration is essential. And who's going to give it to you? Liquid IV, because Liquid IV is the number one powered hydration brand in America. Their hydration multiplier is the one product you're missing in your daily routine. I like to use it first thing in the morning. I've been doing a lot of workouts here and there, so I pop it in my water bottle first thing in the morning. Gives me a little boost of energy of what I need. And sometimes during the day when I'm doing that like 2 o'clock rundown, I'll pop a little one. If not in the morning, it gives me a little bit of that energy that I need. With just one stick, you can hydrate real life 2 times faster than water alone, plus get essential vitamins and 3 times the electrolytes as the leading sports drink. And not only that, Liquid IV comes in 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like my day to day, I'll wake up and pop a Liquid IV just to get my day started and start off with proper hydration. And then I am like required to be physically active between the hours of like 2 or 3 p.m. until 9, 10, 11, sometimes midnight if I'm doing a backup gig. So I'll do another one maybe around noon, 1 p.m., and that'll keep me going throughout the day. And I just feel so much better. I don't even drink coffee on the regular like that because I don't need to pick me up unless if I'm like really just not sleeping much. And then I'm like, all right, get me that. I don't like to rely on caffeine unless I absolutely feel like I need it. Liquid IV does the trick for me. I don't know about you.
Again, one stick with Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficient than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins with 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drinks, and it's made with quality ingredients, non-GMO, and free of gluten, dairy, and soy.
Liquid IV believes that equitable access to clean and abundant water is the foundation of a healthier world. They partner with leading organizations to fund and foster innovative solutions that help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in 50 plus countries around the world.
Yeah, man. Real people, real flavor, real hydrating. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use our code 1SETPOD. That's 1SETPOD and at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code 1SETPOD at liquidiv.com. Dude, I've been getting this annoying itching feeling under my armpits from the deodorants I've been trying and using, and I can't seem to find something that works for me.
Have you ever tried maybe like a natural deodorant?
Natural deodorant? No. Are you insane?
No, but I am wild. Oh. Wild is the UK's #1 natural deodorant company that focuses on performance, sustainability, and style.
Their mission is to clean up the bathrooms by leaving it free of ugly, single-use plastic bottles and unnecessary chemicals.
You know why Wild is great? Because it actually works and it's eco-friendly and contains over 98.5% natural ingredients.
They have a fully sustainable design with aluminum cases that last for a lifetime, plus biodegradable, recyclable refills. And you know what's cool? They can actually imprint your name on these aluminum cases for a small additional fee.
Wild is super convenient with flexible subscription options or paying as one-off purchases. And you can customize your order by choosing your case, color, and various scent combinations. I know I have the ocean mist, the fresh cotton and sea salt, and the orange and neroli flavors, and they all smell super great. And what's best about them is They don't just wear off immediately, and then all of a sudden you smell like BO.
Yeah, I've been rocking the sandalwood and patchouli scent right now. And again, great scent, lasts like throughout the day, that you're pretty much protected throughout the day. And I also was able to try the mint and aloe vera. Big aloe vera fan, right on point, long lasting, and you can look forward to these cases and scents in a limited edition every month.
Go wild today with a special discount of 25% off your first order when you get the code OneSetPod at checkout. Go to wearewild.com and use the code OneSetPod at checkout and enjoy.
Have you ever wanted to start your podcast but didn't know where to start? The One Set Bros are here to talk to you about Zencastr. Zencastr is the ultimate base podcasting solution and now the all-in-one podcasting platform, making podcasting easy. They've sure made it easy for us to be able to record our podcast and our episodes every week for you guys. Once you've set up your account, you're simply one click away from recording a high-quality podcast with studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. My personal favorite feature is their multi-layer backups, which ensure our recordings are always in the highest quality, even during unstable web connections. And if you thought you needed multiple tools and services for your podcast, Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform allows you to create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code OneSetPod, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences we do with all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. So my next one is, what if Renly Baratheon never got killed by the black magic?
Okay, so for me with that, I feel
it may not have impacted too much, but it's like, what if he was still around? Because he was trying to do a lot of, not manipulating, but he wanted the throne. So you would have had that other Baratheon trying to go after with Stannis. You probably would have eventually had some type of battle off with those two as well.
Yeah, I think that the whole way that they killed off Renly Baratheon was a way for Stannis to kill Renly without Stannis physically killing Renly himself. I think without the Red Woman doing that whole magic thing where like the demon that was birthed out of her killed Renly, I feel like Stannis or someone would have just killed Renly themselves, and then you would just be like, okay, Renly's dead. Like I don't see him going far in the show at all. So,
and that was my mindset with it too. I mean, it's not something that was going to be impactful. You knew he probably would have been killed off eventually down the line, but you would have probably seen him and Stannis probably go at it on the battlefield too, because he was willing to go to battle with Stannis at one point as well. But then, he got killed. So you would have eventually just seen them in a battle, and Stannis probably would have just killed him on the battlefield. So he definitely wouldn't have lasted that much longer. So it's just interesting to see, like, okay, what if that scene didn't happen? How much longer do you think Renly would have lasted?
Sure.
Let's see. What if Arya never met Jaqen Hagar?
Sure. Yeah.
He saved him at first, and then they met up later in the other seasons. So, but what if she never saved him? What if they never really met in the season 2 to really kind of start off?
Well, she doesn't learn how to, she doesn't train with the Faceless Men. She doesn't learn how to become the fighter that she was as significant in the end of the show. At which we said, if the Hound actually beat Brienne and took Arya back to King's Landing, they could have just killed Arya Stark in the middle of the show at some point. Yep. So,
absolutely.
and then you just lose her out towards the end. I think the whole thing was they were trying to get Arya and Sansa as the last two Starks left, which is fine. They didn't want the whole Stark house to be done with. I mean, I obviously would have rooted for Arya in the end over Sansa, which they both wound up living. But if one had to go, I wouldn't pick Arya for obvious reasons, right?
Of course, yeah.
Sansa was just, get her off my screen. just like her
Right.
mother. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, can't even get ourselves back on track here. I think if Arya doesn't meet Jakar, she doesn't turn into the bad she
Whoopsie.
was at the end of the show.
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, I think she would have eventually acquired some type of fighting skill because she always wanted to learn, but I don't think it would have been to the effect of what she was. She wouldn't have become like the skilled fighter that she was. She probably would have maybe acquired some fighting ability through maybe the Hound and somebody else, but it wouldn't have been like the faceless man and the assassin type of character that she came in to be.
Let's put it this way: she wouldn't have been able to stand toe to toe with Brienne of Tarth in their showdown
No.
at the end of the show. That Brienne would have just kicked her.
Whoopsie.
Right? So
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. Bran would have just been like, "What are you doing? Get out of my face. let me show you something."
Right.
I think I got 2 more from season 2. Yeah. One is talking about Dany. One's talking about Jon. We'll do the Dany one first because that's, again, it's not much of a character. It could be a character change, not character change. It could be a swerve, like when she was in Karth. They were trying to persuade her to, marry somebody in Karth for, power. So what if she would have married and, Ser Jorah didn't advise her, to be like, yeah, that's probably not the best thing to do. What if she didn't have him to say that? She could have thought, okay, marrying somebody could help me get to the Iron Throne, but it may have, hurt her in the long run because they were all just master manipulators at that point.
Yeah, the whole thing with her marrying anybody over in Essos was like always like, probably not going to conquer your end game goal here of reclaiming the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
If you marry somebody over here, they're just going to keep you here, right?
Right.
So I feel like her marrying anybody over there, if she actually did marry anyone over there, they would just get killed off at some point, and then she would just move on her merry way and continue on the path that she already was going on, right?
Right.
And I know that sounds a little bit easier, but I feel like a lot of her intro storytelling stuff was just very much there to be there. Like, it didn't actually get interesting until she got to Marine, for me at least. Or at least when she got the Unsullied Army, like that's when I was like, okay, I can get behind this story angle right here. Like, everything that led up before that, other than, there's some pretty cool stuff that happens in season 1 with her brother and Khal Drogo, and we'll get to that. Yeah, for sure. But I don't see her marrying anybody over there changing the course of the rest of her character arc, because that person would have just not lasted long anyway, and then it would just been a waste of her being married or whatever, right?
Right. Like I said, nothing that would really, be like, oh, she probably wouldn't have made it to the end. I still think she was obviously one of those main characters that was going to stick around a little while, but it was probably one of those things that would probably delay her process to getting where she was at the end of the show. Because with that, yeah, she would have just stayed in Karth or Essos for longer than what she originally did. Then she would have eventually, like I said, somebody probably would have got killed off, or had something go wrong to make her be like, okay, I'm getting out of here, and then go back on her journey to where she needed to go.
Yeah, and again, not that this super
Almost
pertains
like a Sansa thing.
Yeah, not this pertains to seasons 1 and 2 specifically, but again, if she didn't have Tyrion advising her to try to like plan carefully and strategically and politically, I feel like she would have went just full Mad Queen sooner.
Yeah.
And that way,
that's where she was heading.
Yeah, and that way we at least would have had a little bit longer of her being a Mad Queen. But I feel like they couldn't pull the trigger on that being a thing because they were having Cersei elevated as like the top heel leader, like towards the end of the show, right? At least in season 7 and 8 for sure.
Definitely.
So I feel like I feel like Daenerys having further attention as like the bad queen coming to take over would have just taken away from Cersei, which they didn't want to do.
Yeah, that would have eventually probably made Cersei more not lovable, but probably taking her as more of a better person than what uh Danny would have been, because obviously she goes Mad Queen sooner, then you're like, oh, okay, maybe Cersei isn't as bad as what we think.
Yeah, so she would have been like a Randy Orton, like a tweener, right? Like if I'm using
Yeah.
heels faces and people in the middle, like Danny would have just taken over as like the HB IC, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
head
Whoopsie.
charge, right?
Yeah.
So um so I think because they didn't have if they had more time at the end of the show, they could have tried to do some changes like that. Um and they already had you feeling a little bit bad for Cersei when and by a little bit bad, it's like when they had her do like the walk of atonement, right? Like
Yeah.
that was like the only time in the show where you maybe felt for her a little bit, right?
A little.
Um a l- a, l- a smidgen, right?
Just a smidge.
Anthony, what do you have? You have a Jon Snow thing left on your list?
Yeah, for season 2, the last one that I have is, so Jon Snow and some of the other Night's Watch people go out beyond the wall to go try to kill Mance Raider, but then they get kidnapped by the White Walk, not the White Walkers, the Wildlings. So the thing is, I forget the guy that was with John, and they fight, and he convinces John to kill him and try to become a wildling to get into their little thing, and that's when we first meet Egret. My thing is, what if John never really had that relationship with Egret? Would that have kind of changed his thought process with staying with the wildlings a little bit longer, or would he have still, I think he still would have obviously left in the same amount of period, because he wanted to go back to Castle Black to tell everybody, hey, wildlings are coming, we need to prepare for them. But my thing is, without Egret, what probably would have changed his mindset while being with the wildlings?
So I think when you look later down the line in the show, right? Um you have the Night's Watch and the Wildlings actually like conjoined to fight
Yeah.
to fight the White Walkers. When you get
Hmm.
towards the end, um, and again, this goes to if you don't have the Children of the Forest, which you talked about in the last episode, you never have the White Walkers. Then the White Walkers, if they weren't part of the story, then you just have the battle for King's Landing. You have for the Iron Throne and the Battle of the Seven Kingdoms, right?
Hmm.
So I think you don't have to create the conflict, or you don't have to have Jon Snow try to bring the peace between the Wildlings and the Night's Watch. Um,
Hmm.
if you write the White Walkers off of the show, right?
Yeah.
Like just have them battle each other, and then whoever survives, whoever wins, um, takes over the Night's Watch and north of the Wall, for that matter, and then they would just own that territory. And then, I mean, the thing with the wildlings is like they live beyond the wall, right? Like Mance Rayder was the king beyond the wall.
Hmm.
Um, so for him to take over the wall, the thing with the wall is like that was a place where people got banished. Like it was like jail for people. Like, we're not going to kill you, but we're going to send you to the wall where you're going to serve out the rest of your days, kind of thing.
Right. Hmm.
Um, so I don't know if like I mean, I could see Mance Raider and the Wildlings wanting to have resources south of the wall, or like if there's a big snow like winter north of the wall, if they wanted warmer weather to retreat to, they could actually live a little bit south of the wall, and that would be all right.
Right.
Um, but I think ultimately it's if the John and Egret love story never panned out, then you never have the Night's Watch killing Jon Snow, which, like we said, he winds up being brought back to life anyway. So,
Yeah. And that was what I
um,
was thinking too. Maybe Jon Snow doesn't get killed. Maybe they just they necessarily don't kill them. Maybe they try to think of like an exiling type of thing. I mean, I don't really know how much more exiled you can be than Castle Black, but
Right.
you can, because they were more mad, I think, the fact that he laid with a wildling girl more than kind of being much of the traitor. He was still labeled as a traitor, but I think it was more for the fact that he
He
laid
he
with a
bro-
wildling girl.
he he
So
he broke the oath, and that was where they
yeah,
were like, you need to be punished for your crimes. Which, if you're at Castle Black, you're already there under punishment anyway, right?
yeah. So
Um,
yeah, I mean, there could have been a possibility that they probably wouldn't have killed John, or they would have just done some type of other punishment to him rather than fully killing him, because he already had a lot of people like against him. But maybe if that Egress story didn't happen, maybe they wouldn't have killed him, but it would have been probably a different punishment. But again, they killed him and he came back to life, so it's not like it really made a difference anyway.
right. Um,
Is there anything else from season 2 that you can think of before we get to season 1?
not not particularly off the top. Oh, there is the Theon stuff, where
Yeah,
Theon actually takes over.
that,
Um,
I think I
uh,
missed one or two of those. Yeah.
yeah, Theon takes over Winterfell, and um, he displays that he burned Bran and Rickon Stark alive, and he goes to behead the one guy. He's not even strong enough to behead a guy. He keeps like
Yeah.
hacking away at him, and then having to
But
kick his head off. Yeah.
yeah.
After he does that, one of his own guys from the Iron Islands knocks him out, and then that's when
Mhm.
um I think that I'm trying to remember. I know that they knock him out and basically are like, yeah, you're. I think that he winds up going back to the Iron Islands right after that, which we kind of talked about in the last episode a little bit with his sister Yara and his dad, and
Yeah.
trying to, um, and then
I think he wasn't tortured until later, but
it,
yeah, it
it
was
was
in like
it,
season 3, right? So
that was throughout season 3, yeah. But
I think he went to the Iron Islands first, met Yara, got back to talking with his dad, and then they eventually just told him that you're not welcome here. So then he leaves there, and I think as he's going back, that's when the whole going back
capturing
to
and all
that
that
area,
stuff.
the capturing and everything. But you can kind of say, and when I was thinking of that, I thought of this what if, but I didn't write it down. But now that we're talking about it, you can kind of say, okay, what if he didn't pull the fake burning of these kids, and he just actually acquired Bran and Rickon, but he continued to keep them as hostages. Probably half that army, because after that, I think they all kind of just really doubted uh, Theon, and they were just like, yeah, we're not for this. So if they would have kept uh, Bran and Rickon Stark as hostages, you know,
Yeah,
probably would have saved Rickon. I mean, it probably would have saved Theon in the long run.
yeah. So I mean, if that's just going back to like, okay, if he was smarter and thought things through and wasn't so arrogant and clumsy with his decision making,
Mm-hmm.
um, beheading the one, he was like one of the eldest people that lived in Winterfell, and he just
Mm-hmm.
if okay, let's say if he spared all three of them, or if he spared the kids and beheaded the old guy, but he actually got it done in one slice, like, okay, this guy knows how to wield a sword.
Yeah.
I think his whole arc would have been a lot different. If he wasn't an actual decent swordsman, I don't think he would have been captured by Ramsay and then tortured, and then he wouldn't have been so mentally messed up.
Yeah.
And
Like you
his
said, yeah, about the same thing. Like how we were saying in the last episode, that it's almost like his whole character arc would have never been the same, and it's almost like he kind of needed that to give some substance to change how you thought of him too. So it would have definitely changed the way Theon's character development would have been, because you wouldn't have had the torturing, you wouldn't have had the mental, you know, breakdown of him. So he would have been able to probably keep being his, you know, arrogant, I know what I'm talking about type of thing, and having bad decisions all the time, and them kind of having them, blow up in his face. But, so it would have definitely changed the character arc of his whole series for sure.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if if Theon was built to be a stronger like warrior, he would have basically just been his uncle at the end of the show, right? Like you could have Cersei trying to join, or you could have Theon trying to marry Cersei to give him the Iron Fleet to help build her army against the incoming,
Yeah.
battles that were to be had after that. That's my take. Is like if you didn't do all of that nonsense, not nonsense, I shouldn't say that, but if you don't do all of the torturing with Ramsay to Theon, you have Theon just take over Pike, and then he basically just follows suit with what his uncle. I think his uncle's name was Euron.
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's just how that works out, and then um just like Euron was trying to get the Cersei, you have Jaime wind up killing Euron. You would just have Jaime kill Theon instead. Like
Right.
that that's not a bad take on it. Like if
No.
yeah. All right, let's move on to season 1. Season 2, the thing is that seasons 1 and 2 are so developmental that
Yeah.
it's like you're just getting to learn the characters, and to change a lot of the decisions here is what's making it hard for us to project the rest of the show. I
Mm-hmm.
I actually think Theon being Uncle Euron makes sense in the long term. You just have him
Right.
kind of annoying in the background throughout the show, or you have him get involved if Stannis took King's Landing, if Stannis uh you know were to go into battle with the Starks, if you have Theon actually intervene, if you had him as like a stronger person coming in from the outside, definitely could
Uh-huh.
have changed a lot of the complexion of the show for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I
Let,
like that. Because
yeah, let,
obviously you had the iron, like just like how Cersei had the Iron Bank, with Euron, like Stannis could have had the same type of deal. Like, hey, we have on the land, and then we have the Iron Bank dealing with everything around it, so we have everything secured. So yeah, that would have been something that Stannis would have really been able to acquire if Theon didn't have any of those other things happen. That could have been a good alliance to really go through.
yeah, if you had Stannis line up with the Iron Islands and he had the Iron Fleet, he would have had the ships on the sea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that could have definitely added to that potential what if for sure. That's a good one. I like that. Glad
Hmm.
glad I remembered Theon in that moment before we got to season 1, because that actually draws out that draws out the bigger picture that we've been thinking about, like
Hmm.
a little bit deeper, right?
Yeah, that was good. Just like we were saying, like they're even with these, sometimes it'll make us think of other parts from these seasons, and then that was just one that came right there. So that was awesome. I liked how that kind of went. So okay, so finally, season one, last season, uh, we're just gonna go right off the bat from how the season one ended. What if Ned Stark didn't get executed?
Right. So
You know,
that happens in episode 9, right? Which
yeah,
episode 10 basically you get the falling out from all of that.
uh,
But you also get um Daenerys, she can survive fire, and then her dragons are hatched, which like it's
and
cool
I got
visual.
something about that too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so we'll get into that. For me, that's not
Mhm.
nearly as it it is a very big thing down the line, right? So
Yes.
Ned Stark being beheaded is what they say starts the actual Battle of the Kingdoms and the whole
Yep.
layout of the show, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so Ned Stark not being beheaded, like the big what if to that is the whole story is different, right? Like for them to say that's what started like the Battle of the Seven Kingdoms, um, you don't have Game of Thrones pan out at all the way that it did. I think the whole show is just a completely different story.
Yep.
Uh, if Joffrey spared him, or let's say it, because they say Ned Stark's not the best politician. So Robert Baratheon shows up to Winterfell um, to get Ned Stark to be the hand of the king, and
And the
then
king. Mhm.
and the whole thing with that was John Aaron was the hand of the king, but then he got murdered, right?
Right.
So, which I'm pretty sure Lysa killed him, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
it was like we were saying again in the last episode, we found out that it was Littlefinger who was manipulating Eliza to kill her husband so that her and Littlefinger can now have like a quote unquote relationship. But it was just more him so he can be, having, power in the House of the Vale.
Yeah, sure. So the whole thing there is if not for Littlefinger conspiring with Lysa Arryn to kill
Mhm.
Jon Arryn, then Jon Arryn remains the Hand of the King. Then Ned Stark never goes to King's Landing. Then the whole show never happens. So the whole
Uh,
show really started with Littlefinger doing all of his plotting.
yeah.
Um, and I mean, really, you get Robert Baratheon. They talk about Robert's rebellion, which happens before the show, that kind of
Yeah.
leads to him coming into power and taking over the Targaryens in King's Landing, right?
Mhm. Killing
So,
Rhaegar Targaryen, that whole
yep,
thing. Yeah.
yep. So, um, jeez, okay. If Jon Arryn stays alive, Ned Stark never goes to King's Landing. He's never the Hand of the King. He never starts finding out all of the things about um, Robert's kids, Joffrey and
Yeah.
Tommen Baratheon, actually being Cersei and Jaime's incest kids, right?
That was one of
Um,
my things. Let's get into that real quick. I mean,
yeah.
that was one of the things. Like, what if within that time, if being that Ned Stark was the Hand of the King, he found out through the books and everything that Jaime actually the kids that were acquired were from Jaime and Cersei. What if he never found out about that?
So, so, um,
Because we know who eventually does find out that Jaime and Cersei were a thing, and we'll talk about that. But what if Ned Stark wasn't really technically the first person to really see that obviously there was a thing between Jaime and Cersei?
so he read that they have that big book of like
Yeah.
history, and
Hmm.
that's where he kind of puts together that like the Baratheons have the dark hair and the Lannisters have the light hair, and
Uh-huh.
which ties into everything that's going on in House of the Dragon with Rhaenyra's kids.
Yes.
They're they have dark hair. They're not
Dark hair.
Targaryen, right? Um, so sorry, just got sidetracked thinking about that and thinking about the hair, like the hair. If
No,
if
it's good. It's
if
definitely the
Ned
same situation.
if Ned Stark didn't find that, somebody else would have, and I feel like everything else would have just panned out the way that it did.
Gotcha.
The only thing there, um, well, I feel like it all kind of ties into everything. I was just gonna say, like, if you don't have, um, like, if Robert Baratheon wasn't killed by the boar, which was actually, Cersei got him insanely drunk intentionally so that he couldn't defend himself against the wild boar. Um,
Hmm.
you could have Robert Baratheon find out later down the line about the incest and the kids being Jaime's, and then you just have no Jaime Lannister, or you have Jaime and Robert duke it out. But
Hmm.
at, at that point, whoever comes to power, I mean, uh, you can't really say that either because the Targaryens are known for having incestuous children as well. So it's not like
Yeah.
the rest of the realm would be like, oh, Cersei and Jaime had incest kids, and like we're gonna banish them. Like,
Right. It
you,
happened. Yeah.
yeah. I think all you do there is if Robert found out, then you have Robert going after Jaime, and then Jaime
Definitely.
Jaime just killing Robert Baratheon because he's the Kingslayer, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that would just feed into his title as is after killing. I think that was Aegon the sixth or something like
Yeah. The
that.
Mad King. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, lots of what ifs panning out here.
Yeah. That was
I,
good.
I just think Ned is too noble and too honest that he shot himself in the foot by like trying to confront Cersei, right? Like, so that's
Hmm.
um. And once Robert was dying, and Robert was telling him to Ned lied on Rob's will as he was dying and writing it, and that's where the treason came in, and that's what got him beheaded ultimately.
Mhm.
But it was Cersei's understanding that Ned knew the truth, that
Right.
she was playing into Joffrey's ear. But at the same time, Joffrey made the decision himself to behead Ned Stark. Like he was
Yeah.
just that that was just Joffrey's coming out of like, okay, I'm a little twerp kid that
Mhm.
is. He went from kind of a little jack
Whoopsie.
to giant asshole right there. That he was like easily the
Yeah.
he was the most hated person on the
Most
show.
hated dude in the series. Yeah, for sure. Uh, we knocked off a couple of the what ifs, but there was one because we did talk about Robert Baratheon dying. Like the one thing was like, what if he didn't die? You know, he could have eventually found out about Jamie and Cersei, and then you would have had maybe something going down with Jamie and Robert. Blah blah blah. And then my other one was kind of something that we again talked about. What my thing was, what if Bran never saw Jamie and Cersei, but again, somebody would have eventually found out about it. So I'm changing this into, obviously this is a big thing. This is going to be probably one of the bigger things we're going to talk about for a few minutes. What if Bran never got pushed off from that tower?
Well, then,
He get paralyzed, probably never finds out about the three-eyed raven.
yeah,
So
that story doesn't happen. He winds up becoming like Sansa, who can't fight and is just annoying.
yeah.
That's what happens next. Okay.
Yeah, so
Um,
it eventually comes like, yeah, let's just get rid of Bran.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, the only thing you could do with him, and I mean, having him push out of the window and him being paralyzed is a good way to do it. But he could be kind of like Tyrion, or like like a whisperer, somebody that just knows a lot. Like,
Yeah,
he's just a very intelligent person. Wasn't crafted to be a swordsman or a warrior like Arya aspired to be. Like they showed him in the beginning of season, like the pilot episode. They showed that he was terrible at like archery and sword, all that stuff.
yeah. I mean, there is a three-eyed raven that obviously he had to acquire from the original one. So you still have even if Bran didn't become the three-eyed raven, you still have the original one, but nobody would have never known about him until Bran really started getting all these visions and everything, and people started saying like, oh well, Bran's a three-eyed raven. So you would have never had the visions, you would have never had Bran telling, and again, you would have never had John knowing his true identity because Bran was the one that told him. So he would have never found out about his true identity in that sense.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Bran that told John or if it was
Well,
Samwell
it
that
was
told
it was
John.
Sam, but yeah,
But
Bran told Sam, Sam told John. So yeah,
yeah, Samwell found out
that,
about the wedding
that yeah,
at
that's right.
at the Citadel, but Bran was able to confirm that he saw it. Like
Yeah, true,
that
true.
that
Yeah,
that that's all that was, right?
yeah. So
I
I'd
mean,
say that's a big, like, just like Theon. If that doesn't happen, that changes his whole scheme throughout the series.
well,
Because
he doesn't wind up being the ruler of the realm at the end of the
yeah,
show.
because
That's
he probably wouldn't have been there anyway.
yeah, yeah, and in that light, it like I think in that light you would have just had um Jon Snow sit on the Iron Throne at the end, but
Yeah, for
he will
sure.
he will claim the throne as um a Targaryen, probably, right?
Probably.
But the whole thing politically towards the end of the show was they they weren't trying to build more of the same. They were trying to reinvent the wheel, right? So
Hmm.
that's where, yeah, sure, Bran the Broken, while he was born a Stark, it's not like the Starks ruled King's Landing. It was just it was like Bran and Tyrion being a Lannister, and you had Bronn on there, uh, and then you had Brienne, who was like the Kingsguard, like the I forget, like he was the head of
What was it?
Brienne winds up being like the head of the Kingsguard, basically like the leader of the
Right.
army, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, without Bran making the discovery, um, without Littlefinger trying to hand off the Valerian dagger to kill Bran
Mm-hmm.
after that, because he was paralyzed, right? So the whole thing with Littlefinger trying to have Bran killed was because he didn't remember exactly what happened, but they figured, okay, if he remembers what he saw, he's got to be gone, or else
Yeah.
he's going to spill the beans, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, so
Again, a lot of
yeah,
differences that would have went down if that would have went a separate way.
absolutely. I'm trying to think of. Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, I think Bran would have went throughout the show fine, unless if he tried to fight with Rob. If like Rob went to try to take over King's Landing, and then maybe he just dies along the way, and it's just kind of like, okay, we don't care, like, right?
Yeah.
Um,
True.
I don't know. It's one of those things. I could care less about the whole Bran storyline until like he became the Three-Eye Raven, and then it was like, okay, he sees what's happening, which is
Mhm.
important, right?
I mean,
But
or I can kind of see, Bran still being back and guarding Winterfell like he originally did, because he knows that, Bran's not of technically maybe of age to really, and doesn't have the fighting skills to be out there. So instead of risking him being out there, and God forbid, obviously Rob does pass, but if Rob dies on the battlefield, you'll still have a Stark in Winterfell, because what's the saying? There's always got to be a Stark in Winterfell or something. So I can still see them keeping Bran in Winterfell during all the things going down.
yeah, what else do you have on your list, man? I mean, I know we got to talk about some of the Daenerys stuff, right?
That is one thing that I have. I have another John thing, and let's do this one. Then we'll get into the John and the Danny things. I think one's pretty significant with John, and it's another thing significant with Danny too. But this one is pretty nice. It's about Viserys. So what if Viserys got what he wanted originally instead of the golden crown that he eventually got and died? So what if he eventually was able to get the power from uh Khal Drogo and his army to lead him into King's Landing and take back the Iron Throne, which they obviously were also rightfully trying to get back because of their ancestors back when they were on the Iron Throne. Obviously, Dany wouldn't have had the same power because, Viserys being a guy, it's always going to be a guy thing over a woman. So you can kind of say, and again, I don't think Viserys still would have been a very long character in the series. He would have eventually died somehow, maybe in a battle, maybe in something. But what if, again, you'll have Dany still with Khal Drogo, because that was the plot to really, I'll give you my sister in trades for like power and everything, so that the whole relationship with Dany and Khal Drogo still would have happened. But what if Viserys comes into some type of power with the Dothraki and everything, and they end up going into, maybe not making it to King's Landing, but really start anchoring his army as well?
Yeah,
Would have been interesting to see, at least.
I think I don't think he ever makes it across the sea to Westeros. I just think that maybe he gets to Astapor, maybe he gets to Karth, maybe he gets to Marine. Like maybe he's around through season 2, but I think that his demise, or his writing off of the show still happens. I just think it was he was too set in his own ways and not really trying to work with anyone and feeling entitled, right?
Right.
That he like that he wasn't trying to build alliances with people in a way that was attractive, right? The only thing he had going for him was being able to wed his sister off to Khal Drogo to get the Dothraki army, right? So
Yeah.
he had nothing else to offer because he
Mhm.
had no allies because he wasn't trying to make friends, and in
That's
turn,
true.
nobody liked him, right?
Again,
So,
so it's like he would have never really lasted that long either because he really didn't have the allies. He was just kind of selfish in his ways. So even if he did get what he eventually wanted out of it, it would have dragged him further down anyway because they probably would have, the Dothraki probably would have killed him anyway
yeah,
in some type of way.
yeah. I the way they did it was so good. Again, another favorite moment in the show, and for it to be, I think that was one of the really cooler moments in season one, and in a good way, where you saw someone
Mhm.
he like Tywin that I was talking about in the last episode. He's one of the bad guys that you saw get like a nice killing off that you were like, holy shit,
Yeah.
that was awesome, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Um,
So we
yeah,
have two more, unless you have anything more to say about that.
no,
But
I'm good, man.
I think we hit the nail on that one. Let's go with John, then we'll end with Danny real quick because we can kind of sum up this John one really quick, and it almost kind of is the same type of outcome with what we said in the last episode. With if Sam never killed the White Walker with the dragon's glass, what if John never acquired Longclaw from Lord Commander Mormon, and that was one of the Valerian steel blades, and he used that to kill the White Walker later in the season. You know, if he never got that, they probably would have never known about Valerian steel. Again, that would have probably been the big thing with the Long Night. They would have never had Dragon Glass. They would have never had Valerian steel. White Walkers run through everybody. Good
Sure.
night.
So, and you could even go back to what if Jon Snow never, because he opted to go to the Wall. He was just like, Winterfell's not for me, and it's because
Mm-hmm.
Ned wound up leaving for King's Landing, and Ned was, well, Jon was Ned's bastard son. Catelyn Stark couldn't stand
Yeah.
him. Sansa couldn't stand him. He just felt like he had no place in Winterfell, and if Ned was leaving, he's like, I might as well just go to Castle Black and call it a day, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that too as a what if. Like, what if he never really went to Castle Black? But then that's too obvious because none of his character arc would have never probably really happened. It would have been totally different. It would have went so many different ways.
Yeah,
so that's why I went with the fact that what if he didn't acquire the Long Claw? I mean, that would have at least been more significant than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing he had going for him after the fact, if not for Longclaw and the Valerian Seal. And again, this is if he ever gets the Dragonstone, but why would he go to Dragonstone? Okay, let's say they knew about the Dragon Glass, but they didn't know about the Valerian Seal, right?
Right.
So he would have at least learned that he could ride a dragon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would have had that going for him, but he was such a swordsman, and so they showed him fighting a ton. So for him to have, a Valerian steel sword was pretty big, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he probably wouldn't have made it out of that battle in season 5 when they went up beyond the wall, where he does wind up killing that White Walker, because he was knocked off from that second floor inside that hut, knocked the wind out of him. He probably had a couple broken ribs, right?
Yeah, right.
That White Walker would have probably owned him if he didn't have
him.
The
yeah. Literally iced him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know how the rest of the show pans out without Valerian Steel. I mean,
yeah.
Other than if they knew about the Dragon Glass and not the Valerian Steel, you could have had that to kind of help defend Winterfell a little bit, but you would have had the Night King and the White Walkers go to King's Landing, because you needed both the Valerian Steel and the Dragon Glass to be able to fight them off, right? Like
Yeah,
that was
because I mean, Valerian steel was so prominent within the Seven Kingdoms, so it's not like that was the only one left. There were very little amounts of Valerian steel made,
Mhm.
because I think they, out of Ned Stark's sword or Rob's sword, they re-weld it into a big. I think wasn't that that was Oathkeeper that eventually was made, right? Or we'll
I,
have to go look at that. That was the beginning after one of
that
the
was
seasons.
that was the start of season 4. Once Brienne and Jamie got back to King's Landing, Jamie had
So that was
some
Rob Stark's or Ned Stark's sword that got remade.
that
So yeah,
that I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I forget.
It very well may have been. But I know that they melted down the one sword and made
Yeah,
and made 2 smaller swords, and then Brienne wound up getting the one. I knew that.
yeah. So like I said, there were many Valerian steel, remakes, and it was pretty prominent among the Seven Kingdoms. But again, it might have not been known at that point that it kills White Walkers. So, without Dragonglass, without Valerian steel, would have definitely been a different outcome with that long night.
Yep. 100%.
So to conclude this, we got one more, and we talked about slightly earlier in the episode, but now we'll give it more detail. What if Dany never acquired the dragons? What if those what if Khal Drogo never died and those eggs never hatched? Would she have? I mean, she would have just been probably going down the same path without dragons. She probably wouldn't have been able to. She wouldn't have been able to get the Unsullied, because she technically sold a dragon for them, got it back, but she wouldn't have had probably as much, weight to pull to try to get those Unsullied.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she wouldn't have been able to negotiate the deal with the guy to give up her one dragon for the Unsullied army, right?
Yeah.
She wouldn't have had anything to go off there. And she
No.
didn't even have the Dothraki army at the time. So
No.
How if Khal Drogo never died, and then if they had the Dothraki army, they could have negotiated something with that guy, and then Khal Drogo could have just killed the guy, and then she could have just had the Dothraki and the Unsullied with no dragons. I think with as much, well, now knowing like with House of the Dragon and how many dragons are on that show and how prominent dragons were in the age of the Targaryen rule,
Yeah.
you like that being such a pivotal part of the story, you don't have Dany be as relevant in the show or even like interesting in that, like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. The relevance of her would have been not as key without the dragons, because obviously Targaryen, you're thinking dragons, so it wouldn't have sealed a lot of her character without having it. I mean, even if she had one dragon, she needed all 3 to take the throne, but I think if she at least had one, it still would have helped her character. But without nothing, she definitely wouldn't have been on the throne like she did.
I mean, and when you think about it, it was really her riding Drogon that did like the most damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the other 2 dragons, like the one winds up dying and the Night King turns it, right? Which,
yes,
let's say you have no White Walkers in the show, then you don't need 3 dragons, right? Because the other dragon just winds up getting killed by the Iron Fleet.
Right.
It was like season 8, episode 4 or 5. I think it was episode 4, because it was after the battle for Winterfell, and it was before Dany. Yeah, it was like when they captured Missandei and the mountain decapitate. It was season 8, episode 4 that they wind up losing this. She goes down to one dragon, right? Which she actually only needs the one in the end to take King's Landing anyway. So I'd agree, she really only needed the one. I think they just added the other 2 to give it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she doesn't have just one dragon; she's got 3, and it just makes her look so much more dominant, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, without any dragons at all, I actually just kind of don't care, right?
It definitely wouldn't have been as important for her.
Yeah,
So.
and I mean, if she had just one, um, I still think that with the one dragon and both the Unsullied and the Dothraki, she was like the greatest threat to King's Landing
Absolutely.
outside of the White Walkers. Like she could have just went over there and blasted everybody all she wanted, and without Tyrion,
Mhm.
I think she does that ultimately.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Is there anything you can think of, man? I mean, those are the ones that I kind of had. So
I mean, everything that we covered in these past 4 episodes are definitely some of like the key moments in the show, and
Mhm.
we've definitely missed a couple. And of course, for everybody tuning in, if we missed anything that you want us to cover, leave them in the contacts in the comments, or contact us. That's what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
yeah,
Um, and we talk about the show off and on throughout the other episodes as is. We just wanted to do a series of episodes for the pod that covered the show
Mhm.
overall on like direct what if, like specifically what if these didn't happen. Obviously, we had a couple of honorable mentions where it's like we're not changing that at all. That has to happen, which I talked about in the last
Yeah.
episode. Um,
And this would be cool to kind of do it maybe on other series. Like I know you're a big Breaking Bad fan. Maybe
mhm.
we can do a Breaking Bad type of what if series like throughout the seasons. You know, we can I know we just both watched Sopranos. Maybe we could do a Sopranos thing and or if there's anybody who would want to be interested in something of like a what if series, we can watch the series and then do a recap of like certain what ifs. What if this happened? What if that didn't happen? You know, so I really enjoyed this, man. And like I said at the beginning of this was a big idea from Jim. So we kind of were going off. I think we originally had another idea, but then it turned into a what if thing. But I think it was the best thing that happened because then you can kind of go off, like you can almost make new storylines coming off of these what ifs, and it almost makes the show that much more interesting to think, wow, what if that would have happened long in latent terms.
Sure. Um, to be fair, Marvel does have like a what if series, and it very much pivots. Like, well, what if this superhero was in like in they have I think it's Captain Britain. It's like, what if Captain America wasn't actually American and they were, born in in Great Britain, and then how would the character arc change for them not being an American citizen, or an American soldier, but a British soldier? So, um,
Yeah.
certainly inspired by that. I don't want to take credit for like, oh, this is an original thought. It's definitely not.
Right, right,
I,
yeah.
I was just like, with a show like Game of Thrones, there's so much that happens in that show that like one what if sets off so many other different shoot, I lost the word. Implications, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Sounds
implies it implies that other things. Trying here, and it implies that it's like the butterfly effect, right? Like if one
Yeah.
thing in time changes, the whole course of events will change, right? But we obviously wanted to talk about some bigger moments and some not so big moments.
Mhm.
I think this was a pleasure. Not that the other episodes that we do together aren't, but just doing this series of 4 episodes and going through. I'm glad that we
Yeah.
didn't. I'm glad we didn't try to do all of Game of Thrones in one episode. It would have never happened, right?
It would have been a 4 or 5 hour, 6 hour episode. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think it was good how we did it, just broke it up into 4 things that I think we did that pretty well.
yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah. Again, guys, leave us some comments. If you have anything from season 2, season 1 that we missed, leave it in the comments of what ifs or certain things that maybe you would have thought could have probably went differently. We would love to hear them. If anything, like always, follow, like, subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram at OneSetPod. Hit us up on the Gmail, onesetpod@gmail.com. Subscribe to our Patreon for extra content, and we'll be doing more watch longs as we get more people on the Patreon. We'll be doing some exclusive watch longs with you guys where you guys can specifically, tell us what you want to watch and we can watch you guys in real time. So there's a lot of things coming. And if you guys want to support the pod, make sure to hit up our merch store. We have shirts, sweatshirts. They're all in stock. So feel free to go pick something up, support the pod. And other than that, man, just like anything, do you have anything else to say before we get out of here?
Thank you, everybody. All the love to you, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you. Anth, love you, bro.
All the love. This has been One Set.